So in this video, I want to talk about how people breathe in the movie Tenet while they're inverted. So the premise of Tenet is that the characters have developed technology to invert time so you can experience time backwards. And so how that works is instead of dropping a bullet on a table, it will instead go up to your hand. So in this simple animation I made, you have time going forward as the red arrow and then time going in reverse as the blue arrow. And so the bullet is in a high energy state in your hand because it's off the ground and gravity's acting on it once you release. And then in reverse time, when you're inverted, it goes from a low energy state to high. So it clearly affects physics on a local level. And so how can we apply that to the people breathing in inverted time? So how does an inverted lung work? So how an inverted lung works, well, first we have to understand how a normal lung works. And so normally what happens is you have your diaphragm here that's typically dome-shaped, and contrast to popular belief, we don't actually suck in air. We actually have the diaphragm flatten because it's right now in a dome shape. It contracts and therefore flattens and helps create a pressure difference. So air outside, which is then becomes a high energy state, goes into the low energy state of the lung. And so this is important because that's how inhalation works. That's how we draw in air from the atmosphere into our lungs. And so continuing with this animation, so it goes and contracts, and now here it relaxes, right? So what happens when we relax? So for this, we can talk about it in this little drawing I made. So essentially at equilibrium, we have, let's say, 10 particles of air inside the lung and 10 particles outside the lung. Well, what happens is when the diaphragm contracts and expands the amount of area, then suddenly, even though there's still only 10, relative to the amount of area, you can say that it became 5, right? Now suddenly there's a difference, and nature doesn't like difference. It doesn't like imbalances. So you're going to have nature try to correct that. So it's going to correct that by pushing air or pulling air into the lungs so that it can fix the difference. And now let's say the diaphragm relaxes. Well, now it's going back into that dome shape. And so once it goes into that dome shape, now suddenly, arbitrarily, I'll say 15, now suddenly you have too much air in the lung. And so now there's also another imbalance. So therefore, nature tries to correct that, and then you exhale. And now you can exhale more forcefully using your abdominal muscles, whether that be just with your chest wall muscles or in combination with your abdominal muscles. You can therefore change the difference and then restore it back to normal. And so going back to the animation, so we're still in normal time. And so right now it's relaxing, and so now it goes to rest, and now we've started inverted. We've started time in the inverse direction. And so these are inverted lungs, right? And so notice how at rest, we still have it as the relaxed state of the diaphragm, but remember that we're not contracting the lung here. We're going to be watching the diaphragm go in reverse, and so it's going to be relaxation in reverse, and that's not inhalation. That's just we're watching the entire cycle of the diaphragm relax in reverse. And so that's why you also see the low energy state go to the high energy state. And remember, equilibrium always wants to go from high to low, but in this case it's going the opposite direction because these are now inverted lungs. And so continuing on, it's going into the inverted state, and then just going back a little bit. So I put I and E here. So I just means inspiration or inhalation, and this is exhalation. So in this case, what's happening is it looks like it's inspiration here because air is being drawn into the lungs. However, it's actually exhalation in reverse, and that's because time is going backwards. And so continuing on, so now we're going to see it all the way go there. And then, okay, so now it's contraction, right? And once again, it's contraction in reverse. And so And that's why you go from a low area to a high area, so a low energy state to a high energy state, because once again, we're in the inverted lungs. And so that's why everything's reverse here. And so this is important because since these are inverted lungs, you're going to have the problem of these characters needing a mask. And that's why all the inverted characters need masks. So because normal air doesn't want to go into these lungs, especially, for example, when it's dome shaped and the physics are being reversed, normal air is not going to be able to help these characters live, and they're not going to be able to supply the characters oxygen. And so that's why these characters have to wear oxygen masks so that they have a continuous supply, and then they'll be able to survive as long as they have a continuous supply of oxygen. So that's my take on why the characters in Tenet wear masks and how the physiology of their inverted lungs work. So thanks for watching.